make sure that you check the description for any updates over time if you're watching this on YouTube. And then also, there just is a quick update for number 13. The answer choice on the answer key on if you bought one of the books like early on, of the ACT books, it's wrong. So it should actually be pause if you don't want to hear it till later, G. But anyways, let's go. So let's go and do number 1. What is the value of this right here? So absolute value of -8, that's just going to be +8, minus, and then let's do 5 minus 32 is -27. So absolute value of -27 is just +27. So 8 minus 27 is equal to -19. So it's F. I'm glad it's making more sense to you guys. Let's keep going. So for number 2, it says, if Jenny bought a round cake for her birthday, which has a diameter of 8 inches, then what is the area of the cake? So it has a diameter of 8 inches. Remember, diameter is twice the radius. So if we want the radius, we just divide this in half. So the radius is equal to 4. The area, the cake is a circle, so the area is equal to pi r squared. So all we have to do is plug in 4 for r. So then we get that that's 16 pi, so that would be A. Let's go to number 3. It says, a rectangular pool has a width of 30 feet and a length of 40 feet and is surrounded by a tiled path with a uniform width of x feet. The combined area of the pool and the tiled path is 1,700 square feet. What is the value of x? Round your answer to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so let's draw this out. So we have the pool on the inside and like it's surrounded by the tiled path over here. So the name of this book, this is Overcoming ACT Math by Sophia Garcia, available on Amazon. So then what we're going to do is, if I'm drawing out this, the scenario that they described here, it's going to be that the pool has a length of 40 and a width of 30, and then there's the uniform width of x feet. So that means like it can go x feet this way, or it can go this way, x feet this way, x feet as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, the whole entire combined area, so like the area of this entire figure is going to be 1,700. So if I'm talking about what this whole entire side length is, that would be 40 plus 2 x's, 2 versions of x. And then if I do the same thing with the other side, it would be 30 plus 2 versions of x, gives me that width right there. And remember, length times width gives you area. So this times this gives me that total combined area of 1,700. So that's what I'm going to do. 40 plus 2x times 30 plus 2x is equal to 1,700. So now I'm going to FOIL this out. So FOIL is the acronym that stands for what I'm multiplying when I have 2 terms plus or minus times 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses. So F stands for I'm multiplying the first things together, 40 times 30. So when I do 40 times 30, what I'm going to get is 1,200. I'm so sorry if you hear noise in the background. My sister is obnoxious. And then we have 40 times 2x, which is going to be 80x, plus, and on the inside it's going to be 2x times 30, so that's going to be 60x, plus the last term's 2x times 2x is going to be 4x squared. That's going to be equal to 1,700. So we're going to combine these terms in the middle, and that's going to give us 1,200 plus 140x plus 4x squared is equal to 1,700. So then we are going to subtract 1,700 from each side so we have a quadratic equal to 0, because then we can use the quadratic formula. And I'm actually going to reorder these so that it looks nicer. So all I'm doing is changing the order here. And then if I subtract 1,700 from each side, that's going to be minus 500. So now I have a quadratic that is set equal to 0, so I can use the quadratic formula, which says negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over, that's supposed to be squared, over 2a gives us the solution for what x is equal to. So you know what a, b, and c are based off of this, because a is the number being multiplied by x squared, b is the number being multiplied by 140, and c is the number being multiplied by, or not being multiplied, but that's floating on by itself over here. And let me just put something right there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to plug this in to this formula, and we can't so we're not factoring this out because I see that it's not going to factor nicely based on most of the answers being decimals. So what we're going to do is we're now going to plug in 140 into B, where B is. So this is going to be 140 squared minus 4 times A is 4, and C is negative 500. And then we have over 2 times 4. So now all I have to do is just plug this into my calculator, where I'm just going to plus all of this, and then I'm going to subtract all of that after. So all I did, for people that are saying slow down, what you could do is watch this later on YouTube and slow it down, but all I did was I identified what A, B, and C are, and I'm plugging them into the quadratic formula. So when I do that, what I'm going to get is, if I plus it, it's going to be 3.2665 yada yada yada. If I minus it, it's going to be negative 38.2665 yada yada yada. So x, we're talking about in the context here, x cannot be a negative number because it's like it's the uniform, what was it called? The uniform width, right? So it can't be equal to a negative number because you can have like a negative width, so it has to be the positive version. So it would be G. So let's go to number 4. A specific screw must be 5 millimeters in diameter with a tolerance of 0.05 millimeters. Which of the inequalities below represents the acceptable diameters? Now again, you can kind of like memorize the formula kind of setup for these, where it's like the tolerance or the margin of error is always going to be like the part by itself, and whatever the specific like measurement or requirement is going to be subtracted inside of the absolute value bar, so you can remember that and just know that it's A from that. Or you could just start plugging in values to kind of see like what is the correct answer. Like tolerance of 0.05, what that means is that it could be like 5, or it could be 5 minus that. Like it could be off by 0.05, or it could be 5 plus that. And then you could plug those in to see what works as well. But usually the easiest thing for students is just to memorize kind of like that setup. So then it would be A. And then for number 5, it's the sum of 3. Sum means I'm adding, so the sum of 3 and whatever 400% of 2 is. So 400%, if I'm finding the percent of a number, I have to move the decimal 2 to the left. So then that's 4 times the number I'm taking the percent of, which is 2. So this would be 3 plus 8, which is 11. So I need to get 11 if they're equal to each other. So now let's do 200% of 4. Well, if I move the decimal 2 to the left, that would be 2 times the number I'm taking the percent of, 4, that's 8, that's not 11. So now let's go and do G. Well, 200, if I move the decimal 2 to the left, is 2. So that's going to be 2 times the number I'm taking the percent of, 5.5. That does equal 11. So that is correct. It should be G. Now for answer or question number 6, we have these two, and then it says, when two numbers are chosen randomly from set C, what is the probability that they sum to 9? So the probability that they add up to equal 9 is what that means. So that would have to be when you're doing 4 plus 5, that equals 9, 4 plus 6 equals 10, and 5 plus 6 equals 11. So it only happens with 4 plus 5 out of the 3 possibilities I just described. So it happens one time out of the 3. So that would just be 1/3. So C. So now let's go to number 7. The functions f and g are defined by this. What is the value of f of g of -2? I always say start from the inside out with these, so we're going to do g of -2 first. So g of -2, all that's saying is that -2 is my x. I'm replacing everywhere I see an x with -2. So then we're going to say that this is equal to, -2 squared is 4. So 4 minus 3. And that's going to be equal to 1. So now instead of g of -2, I have 1. So this is going to be f of 1. Well, that just means for the f of x function, everywhere I see an x, I put a 1 instead. So it's going to be 9 times 1 plus 1. That equals 10. So that would be my answer, K. And if you want to watch this slower later on, remember you can see it on YouTube when I upload it later. And then is this ACT or SAT? This is my ACT book. So let's go to, let me get water really quick, guys. So let's go to number 8. So it says, Maria needs 480 square feet of tile for a kitchen. If the type of tile that she wants is sold in square meters, then approximately how many square meters of tile does she need? So someone asked, is that a quiz book? This is just one of the quizzes in my book, but it's like a whole book that has like a diagnostic test at the beginning. There's 9 quizzes spread out, so you're practicing periodically the most common types of questions. And then there's a review test at the end, and there's a chapter on each of the topics. So not just quizzes, no. And then if you're interested in getting it, it's called Overcoming ACT Math by Sophia Garcia. It's available on Amazon. And I have the same thing for SAT if you need an SAT one. And please buy it if you would like to support my channel so I can move out of here, please. Okay, so then let's go to number 8. And we have Maria needs a 480 square feet of tile for her kitchen. If the type of tile that she wants is sold in square meters, then approximately how many square meters of tile does she need? So 580 square feet, so feet squared of tile. And then we have that it's 10.76 square feet for every 1 square meter. So this would allow us to cancel out the units that are right here, the squared feet, which we're not interested in, and leave us with just the unit we are interested in, which is the square meters. So then all you have to do is you plug that into your calculator, and you would get 44.609 yada yada yada, which is just, it's asking what approximately how many square meters, so that would be approximately 45. And then we're going to have number 9 says, if x is a real number and x is greater than -4, which of the following statements must be true of the number represented by y? So this is the equation for y. So x has to be greater than -4. So let's say that x is equal to -3. Let's try that out. So if x is equal to -3, that means that y has to be equal to, so that would be -3 plus 4. And then we have to do y is equal to the square root of 1, so that equals 1. So let's check this against all of these. So y is negative. No, it doesn't have to be negative. Y is irrational. No, this is rational. Rational basically means like you can make a ratio out of it. So this would say irrational would mean like I can't make a ratio of it. So that doesn't work. Like 1 is rational. Y is equal to 0. No, it doesn't have to equal 0. We just saw that. Y is greater than 0, that matches. Y is undefined, no. So it would be J. Now, you didn't have to pick -3, I just picked, like, the first number I thought of. You could pick other stuff as well and do the same thing with process of elimination. So did you divide on number 8? Yes, so for number 8, it would be 480 divided by that. So let's go to number 10. It says, given that a line passes through 2, 4, and 4, 6, it must also pass through. So if something is passing through a point and it's like it's part of that same line, basically, like if it's passing through, if that point works on that line, it passes through that point. So what you need to do is you need to come up with an equation for the line, like this, y equals mx plus b. You have to find out what m and b are to have a specific equation. So m represents the slope. So if you have 2 points on a line, you can figure out the slope from slope formula, which says that you just subtract the y's and put that over the subtracted x's. So let's just say, I'm going to say that this is my x2, y2, and this is my x1, y1. So if I plug in, then this would just be 6 minus 4 over 4 minus 2, which is equal to 2 over 2, which equals 1 as my slope. So I know my slope is 1, but I need to figure out what b is to have a full equation. Well, they gave me an x comma y. They gave me 2 of them, actually. So I just pick a point. I'm just going to pick the 2 comma 4 one. You could pick the other one if you want. And I have an x that I could plug in, and I have a y that I could plug in. So I'm going to do that and help me solve, and it's going to help me solve for b. So 4 is going to be y. I already know that m is 1. X is going to be 2, and I'm going to say that's plus b. So now I can just do 1 times 2 is 2, so 2 plus b equals 4. Subtract 2 on each side, that gives us that 2 is equal to b. So I know that b is 2. So now that I know this, I know my equation has to be y is equal to x, because 1 times x is just x, plus 2. So now I can just put these points into that equation. If it works, then it's part of that line. So let's try 0, 2. So if I plug in 0 for x and 2 for y, does this work? Well, that would be 2 is equal to 0 plus 2. That works. So this works. It passes through that. Now let's try it for 1, 1. So that would mean that 1 for y has to equal 1 for x plus 2. That does not work, so it's not that one. And let's try it for 3, 5. That would mean that 5 is the y, so 5 is equal to, and then 3 for the x plus 2. That works, because that's 5 equals 5. So 1 and 3, so it would be D. So now let's go to number 11. For the parallelogram shown below, W is equal to that, and all labeled angles are in degrees. What is the measure of X? So we want to find out what X is. Assume that W is the angle that forms between AD and DC. If DC were to be extended outside the parallelogram, so like if you extended this, that would be that angle right there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say, okay, one thing that I know about parallelograms is that like these angles, the ones that are next to each other, have to add up to 180. So the thing with parallelograms is that those add up to 180 and like the ones that are diagonal are equal. So, and this adds up to a straight line. W plus this makes up a straight line. So I could say that 10y minus 3 plus whatever goes here, I'll just say that this is a question mark, plus that question mark angle has to add up to 180. So then I could figure out what that question mark angle is, and I could say that that plus that has to equal 180 to find y, and then that'll help me solve for what x is. So I'm going to now say, okay, I'm going to add, well, I'm trying to get the question mark by itself, so I'm going to add 3 to each side and subtract 10y as well. So then I'm going to get the question mark is equal to 180 plus 3, and then minus 10y. So then the question mark is equal to 107, or sorry, not, I'm doing minus, not plus, by accident. So then that's going to be 183 minus 10y. So we could say, or you also could have done, actually you could have just said that this was 180. That probably would have been a nicer way to do it. Like you could have said that it was just 180 minus 10, that this could be called minus 10y minus 3. That probably would have been the way that most people like to do it. I should have done it that way. So I'm going to show you that way, actually, because that's the way that I would think most students would solve it. Because since they're supplementary, you would just say 180 minus that equals the other one. So you would just say it's 180 minus 10y and then plus 3. And you would end up getting the same exact thing. It's just that this is probably the way that most people would prefer to do it. But either way, you see you get the exact same thing for what that angle should equal. So then what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, that mystery angle that we have, the 183 minus 10y plus this one has to equal 180. So we're going to say that 183 minus 10y plus 21 plus 2y has to equal 180 degrees. So then we're going to say, okay, I'm going to combine my like terms. So my like terms here would be 21 and 183. So 21 plus 183, that's going to be 4, 10, carry the 1, so that's 204. And then negative 10y plus 2y is going to be negative 8y is equal to 180. So now I'm going to subtract 204 from each side because I'm trying to solve for what y is. That's going to give me negative 8y over here. And then on this side, I'm going to get that that's equal to negative 24. So then I'm going to divide by negative 8 to get that y is equal to positive 3. So I know that y is equal to positive 3 now. And I know that this angle right here is equal to 183 minus 10y. So what you could do is, now that you know what y is, you could say, oh, I could plug that in and find out that these are equal by the rule where the diagonal angles on a parallelogram are equal. Or you could say that the angles next to each other add up to 180. That's usually the one that kids remember, so I'm going to do that one. So we could say that any angles next to each other in a parallelogram are going to add up to 180. So we're going to say 21 plus 2y plus x has to equal 180. And we know that y is 3, so I'm going to plug in 3 for y. So I'm going to say that's 21 plus 2 times 3 plus x is equal to 180. And then I'm just simplifying and solving for x. So 21 plus 6 is going to be 27. So So 27 plus x is equal to 180. Then I'm going to subtract 27 from each side. And when I do that, I get x is equal to 153 degrees. So that would be G right there. So then let's go to number 12 right here. So this is the equation. The equation shown above represents the possible combinations of how much money in dollars that Mike could invest in two stocks. X represents the amount of money he could invest in stock X, and Y represents the amount of money he could invest in stock Y. Which graph represents the relationship between the possible combinations of how much money in dollars that he could invest in stock X and stock Y? So you could think about this in terms of like scenarios. You could also plug this in because it's the ACT, so like you could plug in this to see like what the actual equation looks like and what the line looks like. But if you want to use just context, you could say, okay, what about if X is representing the amount he invests in stock X, what if he invests $0? Well, then that means that the y-intercept, the y, would equal 3,000. And you could do the same thing, but for x-intercept. I'm going to say he invests $0 in for the stock, stock y. Then that means that the x-intercept has to equal 3,000. So they basically have to touch y and x at 3,000, which would be this one, is the only one that does that. So it would have to be A. And then for number 13, it says, suppose a house depreciates in value by 15% per year. Which of the following is closest to the percentage of its original value that the house will be worth 4 years after it has been built? Okay, so it's depreciating means like it's going down in value by 15% each year. So we have the original value of the house. So we'll just say like value, the value of the house, the original value of the house, and then it's going down 15% each year. So that means if we take 100% minus 15%, we're talking about it's 85% of its value each year. So 85 as a decimal, 85% as a decimal would be 0.85 every single year. So we'll say for Y years. So you're basically every single year, whatever the value is, you're doing 85% of that. Because if you're 15% less, you're talking about 85% that you have left. So like, for instance, if you have, let's say, I mean, this is a really cheap house, but let's say it's $100. Then that means after 1 year, it's going to be worth $85. And then if you plug in 2, like for 2 years, it would just be like you have to do 0.85 times 0.85 times 100, and so on and so forth. So it's asking about what percentage, which is closest to the percentage of its original value that the house will be worth 4 years after it's been built. So they're saying y should be equal to 4. So if you're doing it 4 different times, that would be 0.85 to the 4th power. So then when you do that, you're going to get, that would be closest to G, because it's like 52 point something, which is closest to G.